Okay, I hope sound won't be too terrible on this one. Oh, hey guys, welcome to preview of Hash 29th multiplayer game. I believe it's 29th. Might be 39th. Not sure. Anyway, this is probably one of the largest games we've had, as we have quite a few newcomers, and we'll see how that influences the game. Hopefully it won't be influenced in a bad way. It's necessary that a lot of people die early on, and they probably are going to be slotted into Asia or something, maybe Africa, or later on colonies, but that's just the normal way things work. Now, as for others, I'm just gonna mention countries that are picked right now. I'm not gonna go through players because there are simply so many of them, and I'm definitely gonna forget at least few guys. And right now I think we have between 40 and maybe even 50 players. I'm not sure. Anyway, there's some interesting countries picked this time. We have Scotland picked, that's a newcomer. England slotted, Brittany. I'm starting from the Western Europe, but yep. So England, Scotland, Brittany, France, of course, Burgundy, and we have Portugal, Castile, Aragon, Morocco, Tunis here. We have 4 Germans. I am not sure. German minors, that's it. I'm not sure what they picked exactly. I think there was Cologne, I think there was Hesse, Hamburg, and I think Frankfurt, but they might change which the last moment. That's completely fine. And then we have Denmark and Sweden as players. There is Bohemia and Austria here, and then Italy is also very interesting. We have Milan, Genoa, Pope, and Naples. So we have, out of Spanish Empire, we have 3 players that could potentially, I guess, form. Although Naples is not really a valid choice there. It's mostly going to be Castile or Aragon to fight over it. But you never know what Naples is gonna, end up doing. And also, I forgot Switzerland here. Now, the interesting thing in Italy is that we have Genoa and Milan bordering each other, and then also Milan is bordering Switzerland. So either Milan dies very early on to coalition between Genoa and Switzerland, or they might try to work something out with Genoa, as I've tried doing some Diplo with Genoa, and he doesn't seem like he's willing to go into Italy, or that's his main goal. I think he's mostly gonna focus on colonization and just getting a lot of money. And that being said, there is gonna be a lot of countries that are going to try to compete in colonization this time. Mostly Genoa, Castile, Portugal, Brittany, I believe, and England. I don't know about Denmark. I expected them to try to colonize, but we'll see how that works out. And then Balkans and Eastern region, or I guess Middle East. We have Hungary, Serbia, Ottomans, Knights, Mamluks, and I don't think we have Oman. Maybe we have them. I know we have few players over here. I can't remember, honestly. I know we have Persia, we have Timurids or Mughals, and we have one of the courts. Is it Uzbek? I think it's Uzbek. And it will be a fairly interesting region. Mainly whether Persia and Mughals or Timurids are going to choose to work together, or are they going to try to kill each other very early on. I think it's better, even if they plan to eventually fight between themselves, I think it's better for both of them to remain allied for the very early portion of the game, because fighting a PvP wars in first, let's say, an hour of the session is really not the good way to develop your country, as you will fall behind compared to others. Oh, I forgot there is also Georgia in this region. Now, there was a potential for a gank on Ottomans early on, but I think that's gonna fail. Usually those ganks either work very well and actually kill Ottomans day one, or they fail miserably, and then most of the time, 80% of the time, I'd say they just, you know, there is a lot of talk about it, but it actually never happens. And Ottomans just eat everyone, which is kind of the things work. So we have, in Northern Africa, we have Mamluks, Morocco, Tunis. I think it's a fairly interesting situation now that we don't have Ethiopia. And Mamluks have a lot of options here. They can choose to fight Ottomans very aggressively without having to worry about Ethiopia stabbing them from behind. They can also choose to play more passive aggressive way, kind of what I do to Ottomans when I play Mamluks. I build a lot of forts in these mountains here and just expand rapidly into Ethiopia and this region over there. Now, unfortunately, I figured that that is actually not the best way to compete with Ottomans. Even though you get more dev, it's not your accepted culture, there is a lot of unrest, you will lose a lot of manpower, and eventually just Ottoman trade is simply better in Constantinople before you develop your provinces over here. Also, a lot of that land is Coptic. It's really not that great area to expand into. Mamluks have, I think they're in a decent spot, especially now that Tunis is actually played by one of the more experienced players. It's KB, although he did to take over Tunis like 2 days ago, maybe a day ago. He didn't have much time to do Diplo, but I think it's the best way for Tunis and Mamluks to work out is not to ever have a conflict there. There is really no point in Tunis expanding towards Alexandria, as if Tunis does that, then it's most likely the Ottomans who profit from that, and the Ottomans will have an easy war against Mamluks, and eventually Ottomans will just push Tunis out of it, so Tunis really shouldn't be looking after that. It will be interesting to see whether Tunis decides to go against Morocco. I'd say Morocco is a stronger country in the very beginning because they have a gold mine, but their position is not that amazing. And their trade node is much better than Tunisian one, but they simply have more enemies, more potential enemies, and their expansion seems fairly limited early on. As you can see, they have the Safi trade node, which flows into Sevilla, and they also have parts of Sevilla. So if they're able to, get back some of these territories, they might be in a very good spot. But then it's fairly poor trade nodes, fairly poor land. The best way to play Tunis is either to expand into Aragon, which you might try to do right now, or just to go into South Africa, or the Central Africa, sorry, and expand there, get some land there, culture convert that, and then eventually once stuff breaks out in Europe, a huge war, then you pick a side and try to make some profit. I really don't think we ever had a good Tunis player in these games, and will be fairly interesting to see what KB does. Now, that is for the Ottomans and Northern Africa. We have a lot of players in the Eastern Europe. There, as I mentioned already, there is a Denmark and a Sweden player. Is Poland and Lithuania without Teutonic Order, which was kind of strange for me, but I guess adding a Teutonic Order might be an overkill to Poland, as then I guess there would be some initiative by Lithuania and Teutonic Order to ally up and eat Poland. I don't know how well that would work out for Lithuania. They might prefer to keep Poland and Teutonic Order as neutral or allies, and then try to end the Russian reign here, or maybe even form Russia themselves. Question mark. That leaves a question open whether that is going to be Lithuanian play. Now, the interesting part of this campaign is that we have Crimea. Actually, I'm fairly certain we have Crimea. Maybe we had it, but the player switched. And I think we have Uzbek. Also, we have Novgorod. Now, that's not gonna be a fun time for Ascension playing Muscovy there, unless he allies Sweden. Now, there. I've talked to PTZ yesterday, and we actually kind of did a preview of this game already on this live stream, but it was quite bad, and I actually didn't have time to edit it and post it on YouTube, so I'm redoing it today. But we argued whether it's a better move for Sweden to kill Novgorod or to ally Novgorod, kill Moscow, and then kill both of them later on. I'm gonna still stand by what I said, and I think that it's better to kill both of them by allying Novgorod first, even though it makes sense to ally Moscow in this position because you can expand into Novgorod, but then Moscow also doesn't really want you as an ally. He doesn't want to split the land with Sweden. This is all good Russian land, and actually Neva or St. Petersburg is really good province, so you don't want to give that up to Sweden. And Sweden already has a very defensive border with Novgorod/Russia. Oh, he doesn't have to worry about that. Then I imagine Sweden is going to eat Norway eventually, and there is a potential for Sweden to even go into Livonian order or Teutonic order. Whether he decides to do that or not, I don't guess that depends on diplomacy. I'm not exactly sure what happened between those countries there. And then HRE will be... I don't know what to expect from that. And that's my main worry. There is a bull on Austria. Is a player with... when I saw bull on Austria, my initial thoughts were, oh crap. Okay, not because he's a better player, but because he has inconsistent diplomacy, and I think that's very bad for Austria. Now, Austria is probably the most important country for game stability, and if it dies early, it would be a very bad thing for the game. But not necessarily if there is a good successor to the emperor, like Bohemia or maybe Bavaria in this case, although Bavaria is AI, I guess, so maybe Brandenburg would be a bad emperor because he's a huge target, and that's actually being played by Tornado, which is already very like some of the people around him are already very worried about it. Erling is playing Bohemia. It will be a very competitive HRE, and that's why I chose to not have anything to do with HRE. I'm not gonna expand towards them. If they do come towards France, I'm probably gonna look to ally someone on the other side and stab them in the back. Definitely not worth my time, and I would probably waste my resources and manpower trying to expand there for very little gains. As for Persia in this area, I think I covered that. The countries that are most likely to die first are probably German miners, perhaps Brittany, Scotland I would say, and if the Ottoman gang fails, I'd say Serbia. Also I'd say Milan, no matter what, because he's next to CG and Switzerland, which is a very aggressive player. And on top of that, his diplo situation is already very bad. Who is he gonna expand into? Well, he doesn't have much of a choice there. He could go into Mantua, he could go into Venice, but that's fairly hard if Austria doesn't focus on Venice early on. So I think Milan is gonna die. One of the Iberians is gonna die, either Castile or Aragon, and that might pull another Italian into that chain as well. And then I have high hopes for Morocco dying, just because he's a new player and it's a fairly contested region. It's not an easy country to play, even though I think Morocco is one of the most under what's this word? Morocco is probably the country that has a lot of potential, but people just don't realize it. They have the gold mine, which gives them stable income, and the position is actually not that bad if you can somehow get rid of Portugal over here and quickly annex these guys, which this Morocco should have time to do, given that there is going to be a Castilian-Aragonese war. But at that point, you should be fairly capable of beating Portugal. You definitely cannot beat Portugal and Castile alone, but you can probably get some allies to do that for you. Now, as for my game, and actually PTZ predicted that whoever wins the war over France, whether it's Burgundy, Fonico playing that, or me, is gonna have probably the strongest game of anyone here. And I think I agree with that, depending on how diplomacy goes. So it will be very interesting to see what people decide to do. Now, as I think I've covered everything pretty much, I'm gonna focus slightly on my diplomacy before the game starts, and we actually have only 20 minutes before the game. Now, my initial thoughts were, okay, so we're playing France, we have Brittany as a player, there's Castile, Aragon, Savoy had the potential to be a player, but then Switzerland was slotted and actually no one claimed Savoy. I think it's Pritzwell claiming Genoa, which was an interesting choice to me, but okay, he can do whatever. And I was hoping no one would pick Provence, because that would just ruin my game completely, but that didn't happen, so I'm quite okay with that. Now, I went to Burgundy, which is Fonico, and I offered him I think that's a standard deal, like, okay, so I help you for Netherlands, and you give me this French land back, and we'll live together, and we're friends, we're happy, and everything is fine. So to that he responded with, he basically rejected it, saying that okay, I'm not gonna give you any land before I establish colonies. And that got me thinking, okay, so even if that's true and he would give me land after he established colonies, that can take a lot of time, depending on how lucky he is, how much he focuses on getting colonies, whether England decides to block him off or not. And it's just, you can't rely on that. It could be like his first colony can be established in 1600s if he gets unlucky, and then so I have to wait for 150 years until my essential things are decided, and until I have a resolvement of this issue, whether I get Burgundian land or not. So I guess that's the only diplomacy we did. It makes it fairly clear to me that I will have to fight Burgundy no matter what. So we're gonna do just that, and we're gonna go early into Burgundy. Right now I'm not exactly sure who his allies are. It's very possible that he's gonna try to ally Brittany. Could also be a possibility that he allied England. So I talked to everyone, and right now it only seems that he might have allied Castile. And that's a really stupid decision by Castile, as Luxi, I don't know how to explain this, but he always gets into these very complicated diplomatic situations where he's trying to convince other people that attacking other people with him for his gains is actually good for them. And then I just see it as a very, very stubborn way of diplomacy. It's interesting, but I'm getting very annoyed by this bullshit 2 games in a row now. So if you watched the previous game where he played Florence, he was playing France, and not once during that game I had an issue with France, and I actually wanted to fight France. There was nothing for me to gain from that fight. but kept insisting that he fights me. So I go into Switzerland, which was previously allied by Austria, the French arch enemy, and what happened is France allies Switzerland and comes to fight me. For no gains for him, just he's protecting his new ally. I don't understand that. Like, wasn't it better for him to split Switzerland with me and have me stay as neutral, because I had to fight Spain at that point while he has Austria to fight? No, instead what he decides to do is he's gonna ally Spain and basically bank on Spain really wanting my land to have this 2v2 war going, where they basically kept losing until I made a huge mistake, or until everyone ganged up on Austria. So in the end, what happens is I killed France, but I died to my mistake, my greediness, but it doesn't matter. So, okay, he basically, his friends died for no reason. The only reason is that he was just being stubborn with his Diplo against me when I had nothing to do with it. Now, kinda the same thing here. So I talked to everyone in Europe. I go to Portugal. I had to discuss, like, if England potentially goes against me with Burgundy, then I need an ally that can defend me. Like, there's someone with a fleet, and I basically talked to the Portugal about that. And he asked me what I'm planning on doing if Iberian War breaks out, and I told him, well, I'm going to try to quote this exactly as I said it. So if it stays 1v1 war, I'm not going to get involved. Or basically, if it's a fair war, I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to pick a side. Okay, so a few minutes after that, Castile comes to me and says something on the lines, "Why are you threatening my allies?" Question mark. I'm not threatening anyone. I've literally have not threatened anyone in the game at that point. And he says, well, you're preventing Portugal from joining my war on Aragon. I said, I've never done that. And he copies my quote to Portugal. And okay, so first of all, it's a very scummy move by Portugal to share chat logs with other people. But okay, whatever, that happens. But just how did he get that by saying I'm not gonna join if it's a 1v1? How did he get that I will definitely join if it's not a 1v1 from that? And by the way, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily gonna join Aragonese side. If Aragon had more allies than Castile, if for example Aragon allied Portugal, I don't know, Morocco, and Castile was alone, I'd definitely join on the Castilian side. So how's that bad for him? I don't understand. And then he tells me, I'm not looking to fight a long war against Aragon, I'm gonna ally a bunch of people and kill Aragon very quickly. Okay. So, I mean, whatever. Like, it doesn't really make any difference to me, right? And then, I don't know, I can't really recall the entire chat, but whatever. The ending position was that he's gonna ally Burgundy and try to basically dick with me for... again, nothing. I guess for him being scared of me allying Aragon and killing him. Which, I don't know. It's basically, I had this plan in my head how to play Tall France, or some mix. Like, you don't really play just Tall France. but you need at least your starting, like the French culture here, and basically a combination of total France and colonial France, which I think works quite well for me. And then I started thinking about, okay, so what do I do with Diplo? And basically Burgundy and Castile just did all the Diplo for me. Like I know what my enemies are, I know who my potential allies are. There's just very little room for me to make any Diplo moves, and I guess that's what's gonna happen. I'm honestly, yeah, okay. So the main question was whether I want to kill Brittany or not. Now it is a French culture. It's a very good land, but I don't see any real need nor benefits of killing Brittany very early. So I'm gonna let him do whatever he wants, as long as it's not slowing me down or preventing my expansion in some way. If he somehow manages to get a lot of colonies and basically be my Portugal, then I'm gonna let him live. Like, I have nothing against that. Anyways, guys, the game is starting in 10 minutes. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, the game has probably already started. So I'm gonna change the title of the stream and be back in 5 minutes. Thanks for watching. Have fun.